So guys, let's talk a little bit about the OPLOT. We didn't have the update yet, but we still have plenty to talk about the dev server itself, right? And one thing that really crossed into my mind was that the OPLOT is being added only for the Thai subtree, right? For the Japanese tech tree. And a lot of people were asking for the OPLOT to be added for the Soviet tech tree, right? The tech tree that would, of course, make a lot of sense to have that vehicle since it was made or upgraded by a nation that was part of the Soviet Union before, right? So it would make a lot of sense. And the main thing that I really wanted to talk about here is that the Stingray is being added for the US and for the Thai as well, right? So it's a very clear kind of comparison that we can have for both. So the first thing that we need to clear the air a little bit here is that BVVD said that it is not going to be added, so it is already confirmed that it is not going to be added. Of course, the objective of the video is to try to bring a little bit of, a little bit of attention to, is this the right move? Should it actually be added for the Russians as well, or to the Soviets, right? Since it's the Soviet technology, right? That's kind of the idea, but at the end of the day, BVVD already denied that it is coming, at least for now, okay? The second thing that I really wanted to talk about is that it kind of feels that it is Gaijin. I don't know if it's that, okay? So, if Gaijin, if you are listening to this, and I know some of you of Gaijin watch the video sometimes, maybe you can clear it in the comments, I don't know. But it does feel like Gaijin is trying to move away a little bit of a controversy, okay? It feels like that. Maybe it is not that. Maybe it's just for, logic reasons behind it. Just like BVD said, we're gonna get to the logic reasons, right? But, it feels a little bit that they are escaping a little bit of a potential controversy. Since, of course, we are having a war between the two nations that would be part of the same nation in the tech grid, right? So, did they, does that even stop them from doing something like this before? No. Let's be honest. No, right? We have vehicles like, for example, the Chinese tech tree, which is, it's not the exact same, but it's, closer to that as well, right? So, at the end of the day, it's kind of a controversy that, I don't know, it would be kind of weird to, just run away from it, right? But, so let's talk about the logical reasons that they gave us. So apparently, BVD said kinda, it's not exactly that, but that the OPLOT was not really in full service, this particular version specifically, right, with the Ukrainians, right? And that's the main reason, kinda, okay? Or one of the reasons that, it is not really on a full service, it's more used with the Thai, that's what I understood. Of course, it was a Russian stream, and I was actually listening to a translation of the Russian stream, so I might completely have got this wrong, and if I did, let me know in the comments. But it was kind of the reason that I kind of understood that they were trying to give us, right? That the Ukrainians, they didn't have too many of these built, for them, and it's more of a Thai vehicle than anything else. And it makes sense that it's coming for the Thai subtree. And I completely agree that it makes sense that it's coming for that subtree. But at the same time, you kind of wonder, why is that? Because if that is the case, the Stingray should not be added as well for the Americans. And it's being added, right? So it kind of doesn't make sense, right? So in a general perspective, yeah, the Stingray is also a vehicle that it's more used, or it is only used, the main user, by the Thai, right? So it's only used by them. So the same principle goes to here. So it kind of is like a prototype that they are adding for the Americans, because the Americans never used this vehicle. And the OPLOT would be kind of similar to that, wouldn't it? It would be a tank that is, of course, mainly used by the Thai, right? This particular version in specific. But at the end of the day, wouldn't it be weird, to not have it with kind of the nation that produced it? It's kind of weird, isn't it? So again, maybe the actual, like what BVD said, maybe it's for this particular model of the OPLOT, right? Because the OPLOT T that we are getting, it is, of course, the main variant that it's being added, and it is the version that the TIE uses, right? At the same time, there are reports that around 60 84s were in service around 2021, but of course, with the war going, moving forward in time and stuff, it's more and more difficult to actually confirm how many of these they actually have, right? So, on the very least, they had some numbers in Ukrainian kind of semi-service, like initial service or something like that, which is already kind of more than what the actual Americans had with the Stingray. So, honestly, guys, if that is the excuse, I don't know if I misunderstood. If I did, I'm sorry. But if that is the excuse of not adding it to there, or if it is another version, there are some possibilities here of still having it, right? So, for example, if it's another version that the Ukrainians actually have, like for example, the older T-84, right, the proper like older one that doesn't have these more modern ERA and everything, and it will be a more common looking tank, it kind of okay, it kind of makes sense, it is okay, but at the same time, it's kind of weird even with that in mind, because the Stingray is being added for the Americans anyway, right? So it's weird. So at the end of the day, with all of that in mind, I come to the same kind of line of thinking that it feels like it is because they're trying to avoid controversy, right? They're trying to just not, add a Ukrainian vehicle together with Russian ones in the same tech. I think that's kind of what it feels like, okay? Is that okay or not? Honestly, I'm not gonna get too much into that, because every single person in the whole world will have its own unique opinion. I'm gonna be honest, it would make a lot of sense, but at the same time, I mean, we already had certain controversies like this with the Chinese tech tree, right? So, yeah, it wouldn't be the first time. At the same time, I kind of understand why they're doing this. Maybe they will wait until the war, is over, maybe. I don't know. I have no idea. But should it be added? Well, in my opinion, maybe it should. Because, like I said, that is not the Russian tech tree. That is the Soviet tech tree. Even we have the flag there. Of course, because it is the Soviet tech tree, all the vehicles from the other nations that were part of the Soviet Union are being added there. So you can have a Kazakh aircraft like we have there as well. And we can have other vehicles from other nations that were part of the Soviet Union that were upgraded, right? And in the future, I would love to see those, right? Because honestly, guys, where else would those vehicles be added? I mean, the US? Seriously? Like, it's weird, right? So it is the closest nation without having like a new nation of maybe Eastern European nations that would have, these nations being added to it as subtrees. Unless we have something like that, the Soviet tech tree would make the most sense. Having older Soviet nations that became, independent after 91, having its own like vehicles in the Soviet tech tree. I think that's the most, it does the most sense, right? But at the end of the day, it is very controversial at the same way, because there is a war between these nations. So it's hard to say, right? I think it would make a lot more sense, or as much sense as adding with the TIE in the Japanese tech tree. But at the same time, I understand if they're trying to avoid this. And it is a very, delicate subject, right? It is very, very touchy, right? So you tell me in the comments, guys, what do you think they should do? Because it's not the only vehicle that can be added from these nations, right? Especially Ukraine, but many other nations, Georgia and other nations out there, have like versions of vehicles that were Soviet vehicles before and could actually be added and be very cool, right? So I don't know. You tell me in the comments. Even versions like, I mean, we have even aircraft with NATO stuff and other things because of the war that could be added, but it would be weird to have in the Soviet tech tree. So it's kind of crazy. It's kind of a very, very problematic subject, isn't it? So I don't know, guys. You tell me in the comments, what do you think? Should it be added? I think maybe for now, no. Maybe in the future, yes. That would be my official kind of situation because, of course, it's a game, you know how it is, but, anyway, this is kind of my opinion. I think it would make sense to add the OPLOT for the Soviet tech tree, but maybe not now, or something like that. Anyway, let me know in the comments. If you are Ukrainian, what would you like? I think that's the people that would have the most important, I would say, like opinion on this matter, right? If you are Ukrainian and you are, playing with the game and stuff, what would you like to see? Would you like to not see these vehicles being added at all, or being added together with the Soviet tech tree, or being added in another tech tree? Of course, the perfect world would be each nation having its own tech tree, but that's just not gonna happen. I'm Brazilian, and I'm still waiting for a Brazilian tech tree that will probably never happen, right? So that's kind of unrealistic. So what would you like to see? Let me know in the comments down below, and I see you guys on the next one. So I see you guys, and bye.